Hi, I'm Vanessa Allegra. I'm an oil painter and a newbie sailor, continuing the repairs on my beautiful 53-year-old sailboat, the Desperado. Before we begin, let's just get one thing straight. This video is a bit shit, and I'm gonna be bandying that word about quite a bit in this video because sometimes you need a word that's stronger than poop to describe the horrors that you've witnessed. And I have seen some things. Also, on a boat, the toilet is called the Head. This video is about the installation and use of my Natures Head Composting Toilet. It's a really popular brand for people building tiny homes. But when I was researching what to buy, I had a lot of questions that remained unanswered. So if you're thinking about installing one yourself, I will tell you everything that I know, including a detailed rundown of what comes in the box. And what can happen when things go drastically, horribly, embarrassingly wrong.
Worldwide, it's illegal to shit in a marina or a river, anywhere that's not the open ocean. If people are swimming there or fishing there, don't shit there. It's wrong. Don't shit on the dolphins. So boats need to have holding tanks attached to their marine heads, aka their toilets. A really popular version is the Jabsco marine head, which I had on my boat when I bought it. But the problem was mine was broken and it didn't have a holding tank. So if you shat on the boat, it would go straight into the water. What you want to do is shit on the boat, flush it into a holding tank, and head to a pump out station down the track to empty it out. But mine had the gentle stank of death about it. My options were fix the toilet and install a holding tank or buy a composting toilet. Personally, I just couldn't face the idea of using someone else's shitter. I know we do it all the time, I use public toilets, but on my brand new tiny home, I just wanted my shitter to be unsullied. So my only real option was a composting toilet. We removed my broken marine head and I began researching what to replace it with. A composting toilet like the Nature's Head separates the urine and the shit. You sit down and the pee goes to the front in a urine jar and the shit goes into a tub at the back. The tub itself is partly filled with a composting material like coconut coir or wood shavings. Think of it as a litter box for a cat, but you are the giant cat. Now, they range in price a lot. You can head down to your local camping store and pick one up for $100. Or for a brand like Airhead, that might set you back $1,000 just for a used one. So a cheap one will need to be emptied more often and it's going to smell. An expensive one will have inbuilt fans and vents to remove most of these smells, and they're also going to look and function slightly more like a regular toilet. I started researching and the name Nature's Head kept popping up again and again. I kept trying to avoid it because it was expensive. I really did not want to spend $1,600 on a shitter. But in the end, size forced my hand. The Nature's Head was small enough to fit in the teeny, tiny space that is the enclosed head on my boat. It's tiny, so I bought a Nature's Head.
I did it. I bought the stupidly expensive shitter. My life is over. At least I'll shit in a throne.
Communication with the company here in Australia was really good, and 3 weeks later it arrived. This is everything I got in the box. Going from left to right and then down in this photo, you have the base, which is also the tub that catches the shit. Inside the tub you can see a metal agitator bar, and in the front there's a cavity to hold the separate pee jar. On the right is the seat and the lid. The seat has an inbuilt fan which you wire into your power source. Moving down we have the pee jar. It has a little white lid which you can see in the bottom there in a Ziploc bag. There's the vent pipe. This attaches to the seat and leads out to a vent which you need to make. There are some pretty comprehensive instructions which come with, including a laminated sheet of instructions for your guests. Mine is now framed and proudly hanging beside the shitter. So next is the handle. You can see my 3-pronged spider handle here at the bottom. This is technically your flush. You do get different handle options with Nature's Head. I chose a spider handle because I don't have much space, and this attaches to the metal agitator bar in the tub. Together they move the poop and compost around so that everything degrades nicely. Then we have some wiring and a flange. The wiring was plenty long enough for me, and the flange attaches nicely to the pipe and leads out to the vent. There was no vent included, you need to buy one yourself, and that's because this is going to vary because it's on the outside of your vessel or van. I think my vent was only $7, so don't worry about it too much. Next we have a coir peat brick. This is expandable with water and is what you place into the tub as your compost. I knew very little really about composting toilets when I bought it, so I think it was really thoughtful that the company sends you one so you can get started straight away. If you're in the US, they'll likely send you a brick of sphagnum moss because you're fancy. Finally, at the bottom here, we have 2 spray bottles. I assume the green one is for water. I didn't actually read the instructions on that. And the one on the left has a special substance that keeps the bowl clean and helps the compost degrade. You spray this pre and post poop so that you don't get bear tracks in the bowl. And if you're going away on a long journey, I recommend you stock up on this before you go. So you've been watching most of the installation of my Nature's Head toilet. For me, it was kind of terrifying at times because we had to cut out some of the floor to lower it down, and we also had to drill a hole out to the deck. I couldn't even watch some of it because it was so scary. Seeing a hole saw go through the deck of your boat, that is nightmare fuel. But I am grateful for it. The Nature's Head is a clean and functional toilet with a pretty elegant design that I appreciate. It has been installed for nearly a month and a half, and almost everything has been fine and dandy, and I want to say with 0 smells, but it's kind of like a regular toilet. If somebody does something nasty in there, you're not going to go in straight away. You're probably going to give it, maybe an hour, maybe more, maybe it needs a bit more. But the smells will go away because in most toilets you have a vent and a fan, and the same goes for the Nature's Head. It'll do the same thing.
So I have had one quite serious incident with my Nature's Head, which is no reflection on the company Nature's Head at all. It is purely a reflection of me and of the shame that I have brought to my family. I just don't let your pee jar overflow. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Just don't do it. At the time I installed my Nature's Head, I wasn't living on the boat. I was just here on my free days and we were working on the boat, or I was just cleaning things. So I didn't really think about emptying the pee jar because the toilet was so rarely used. Big mistake. Big. Huge. So one day I was cleaning on the boat and I had to pee, so I went in, but halfway through I remembered I was supposed to check the pee jar, and oh my god, was I too late. Pee had gone up into the bowl itself, and there was nothing I could do except take the whole seat off and try and pour the pee out somehow. Meanwhile, the pee jar was completely full to overflowing, and there is month-old pee about to go everywhere. Thankfully, I was able to minimize the spread. And I got the jar out and I emptied it and I cleaned it and I came back, but there was some spillage in that cavity where the jar sits, which had to be cleaned up, and that did take me a little while to clean. But the worst part is that because there was pee that had gone up into the bowl, I had to take the whole top seat part off and out and clean that. But because the seat was off, it meant that you could see straight out into the tub. And while I was cleaning, there was a shit watching me, just looking at me, just sitting in there and looking at me.
The person who had shat this shit had not agitated it in, they hadn't turned the spider handle, and it was just sitting there, and it was wearing a toilet paper hat, and it was watching me. It was watching me with suspicion. What kind of a shit wears a hat? I'd like you to know, it really wasn't my shit, which is kind of worse.
The good news is that there wasn't too much stink because of the fan. Thank you God for installing fans. But it did build up the longer that the lid was off. So I stayed away from there for a full day before I ventured back in, and when I did, I was extremely pleased to find that there was actually no stink, which I had expected horrors, but it was strangely totally fine. Thank you God for putting in the fan. So I've definitely put my Nature's Head through its paces, and I am extremely grateful that it's come out on top. I highly recommend that you, if you're going off grid, get a shitter with a fan. Get one with a fan. And a vent. Just make sure there's a fan. I also recommend that you clean out that pee jar every 4 days. Just do it. Just do it. Clean out that tub once a month, and only use 2-ply, because the thicker and nicer stuff for your butt doesn't degrade very well, and then all of your shits will end up wearing hats. So I think the moral of this story is that you are going to see your friends' shits, and you have to be okay with that. And also, don't let the pee jar overflow. Don't do what I have done. But thanks for sticking around to hear about my descent into a lack of dignity. And be sure to stick around and subscribe to hear about any further dignity losses on my part, or just to see what happens next. I'm going to see you in about a week's time with the next video. Ciao.